evening, everybody, and welcome into Warchant TV on a Monday night. This is the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis, alongside managing editor of Warchant.com. He's Irish O'Fell. My name is Tom Lang. Welcome one, welcome all. Hit the like button as you make your way in tonight. It's the second to last one before Christmas. Unbelievable. Happy Hanukkah to everybody out there as well. Ira, Florida State in a period of transition right now, and the transition is lingering with the coaching staff decisions that are going to be made. Transfer portal reports happening, it seems like, at least one every day about players intending to enter the transfer portal. And then obviously front office hires to come as well. So as we are in a state of flux on a Monday night, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, it's a weird place from a news cycle business. It has not been certainly has not been happening as fast as fans want to see. But you know, it is what it is. They are making changes. The general manager's gone. A lot of there's already been some changes on the coaching staff. We know of a couple new additions. We don't know about the general manager yet. We don't know if there's going to be any other changes. So certainly not satisfying so far, the offseason for Florida State fans. But it is what it is, man. At this point, we just got to roll with it.
Yeah, I wonder, just from your perspective, you're able to see these things without pounding the desk, as I have often done myself in the last couple of months. I'm just wondering, do you look at this situation and say, guys, are you going to move here? Or do you say, hey, man, coming off of 5 and 7, if you're a fan, you're going to be pissed with most anything. And so this is going to be, they're going to take their time, make sure they get it right. Like, where in that spectrum do you find yourself?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just think that I agree with that last part about that. No matter what they do, people are going to be mad. Mm-hmm. People were mad about Brandon Harris being the DB's coach till he left. And then now they're mad that he left. And people are mad that, we put out there that there's a chance, with Tony Tokar's leaving as quarterbacks coach, there's a chance they promote from within. Brendan Brogner is a guy that's been on the staff as an analyst, kind of the same thing that the way Tony Tokar's elevated when he came here as an analyst and then got promoted to quarterbacks coach when Kenny Dillingham left. There's a chance they may do that here because this is kind of Gus's guy, a guy that Gus brought in when he came, and people are mad about that. And so, it is a situation where when Mike Norvell, when they decided to bring Mike Norvell back, yeah, man, I just don't think there's anything that's going to make people happy. And so it is what it is. We just kind of roll with it. I don't know that it's anything's worse or better if you make these moves quicker. I do think people want to know, they're impatient, but I don't know that any of the solutions, other than maybe the general manager hire, if that's a name that gets people excited, but I doubt any of the position coaches hirers are going to make anybody feel a whole lot better about next season because they're mad that Mike Norvell's coming back.
Yeah, I would think, as you're kind of hinting here, that hope would be derived from players and the players 100%. That Florida State could acquire as the portal ramps up in just a couple of weeks officially. But this is where everybody goes grocery shopping in their own mind. And we've done segments on that on the Smash in years past with like little cartoons and everything. Like, what's on your grocery list? What is the priority thing for you in terms of positions and what you're hunting for to help the roster become better with veteran players or proven college players that can turn things around quickly for Florida State? Is there a position group that you're finding yourself as you're seeing these reports of different schools having guys intend to enter the transfer portal? Are you looking towards a trench? Are you looking at a quarterback? Where do your eyes go first when you see those reports that come out from On3 and other outlets?
Yeah, to me, the two sure things that we know, obviously, is offensive line and quarterback, that in terms of there's nothing that can affect that need. Like, that need is there, and it's going to be there no matter what. Some of the other positions are a little bit going to be dependent on what happens in terms of Florida State guys going in the portal. And so, we know that, there's certain positions that right now they kind of look okay, but you don't know who's going to leave. Like, for example, defensive back is a position where I don't think they have a great need. But some people are mentioning in the chat, Matt posted on the Tribal Council not too long ago that, Jabril Rawls has signed with a new agent. And that's a guy who's their kind of the marquee cornerback coming back next year, had a really kind of a breakout season this year, incredible athlete. I think is a surefire NFL player. The fact that he signed with an agent doesn't mean he's going to enter the portal, doesn't mean they can't sign him. It's kind of an indication that he's going to be a hot commodity, but we already knew that. And it just kind of validates kind of what we already knew. But if he were to leave, you're already losing Edwin Joseph's going in the portal. Jerry Wilson, the other corner, is graduated or is out of eligibility. So really that's kind of your three corners. It's kind of your two corners and slot corner that are, could be leaving if Jabril Rawls goes. So, then now all of a sudden that becomes a really marquee position. Defensive end, I feel like we all agree they need to get some pass rushers in here. But to me, quarterback and offensive line's at the top of the list. And the offensive line, I think realistically, we all know what you got out of the portal this year was probably about as good as you could possibly do. Like, you can't ask for a lot more than what they did this last year. So if they can get close to that, that would be huge. But it all comes down to quarterback. They got to get a quarterback. They got to get somebody that, fits into Gus's system, but also has to be a better passer, because you've got weapons, man. Unless they lose a bunch of these wide receivers, you have weapons in the passing game, and you need to get a quarterback who can exploit those weapons.
I'll tell you as a fan, that's one of the frustrating things, is it very much seemed like Gus was not fanning the flames of can't wait to be back in 2026 when he was asked about it towards the end of the season. And looking at the roster, as you're describing right now, the weapons in the pass game, I'm thinking, well, could be worse things, because maybe you could bring in here a coordinator who wants to value throwing the football a little bit more than running the football, just because of the nature of the way the roster is structured in this moment. And it looks like Gus might be coming back. Now, the guys were open this year. There were a lot of open guys, Ira. So, yeah, this is where the quarterback would certainly help. If you find somebody who can, with more frequency, hit somebody down the field, this can change in a hurry, and Florida State offensively could potentially produce to a level where they achieve the things that they wanted to achieve this past year, which is to raise that floor and maybe get to a better discussion in 2027.
Yeah, I do think the one, and I was not, I'm not as anti-Gus Malzahn's offense as Jeff is, as you hear about all the time. But I do think one big positive to it is that if you don't have to be great on the offensive line. This offensive line might have looked a little bit better because of Tommy's mobility and because of the offensive scheme. Now, if you would try to attempt to be like a drop back passing offense or pro style offense, it might have been with a more immobile quarterback. That offensive line may not have looked as good. So the one positive to Gus, if he's staying, which it looks like he's staying because he hasn't left yet, if he is staying, the one big positive to that offense is it's the reason it was kind of created in the first place. You can kind of minimize the dependency on having a good offensive line, a mobile quarterback going with it, takes some of the pressure off those guys, puts more pressure on the defense, and so you can find a solution. But you need to find somebody who can also make those throws. Now, can they get that guy in the portal? They're going to be in demand, obviously. But, man, again, the guy that ended up being Ole Miss's quarterback was not a hot commodity in the transfer portal.
They fell into him midseason by injury.
Right. Yeah. And there are players, but they got him out of a low-level school. There are players out there that you can. When Washington State got Cam Ward, I don't know that it was a big bidding war to get him out of Incarnate Word. So there are guys out there. You just got to identify the right ones and find them. So, I don't think Florida State's going to outbid anybody for Sam Leavitt, but they can find a quarterback. It's just going to have to be somebody who is mobile enough to help the offensive line, but also accurate enough to make people pay in the passing game.
Yeah, there's a question already in the chat from Grant who says, how about the Cincinnati quarterback? He seems like a fit for this offense, and he's referring to Brendan Sorsby, who's from Denton, Texas. Matt Lasser would go from, a little bit interested to, another Texas guy. He's got immense pride in that particular state. He's 6'3", 235. He had a 25 to, I just pulled up a couple of stats, 25-7 touchdown interception ratio this year, completes about 63% of his passes and ran for nearly 600 yards. Like, all those stats sound good. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've evaluated film of Brendan Sorsby, the Cincinnati quarterback. But Grant, those stats do look pretty good. And it looks like a natural fit for Florida State's offense under Gus, in that he can run the ball, but he is a little bit more accurate down the field. The one thing that I've seen reports with Sorsby is that he's awaiting a draft grade. So he's entering the portal, intends to enter the portal, but he's also weighing his options at the next level, kind of like, Ira, what Deuce Robinson is doing in this moment, which is you got three options. You can stay where you are, you could stay in college and go somewhere else, or you can go to the NFL and start your professional paycheck and getting that career underway. That's the whole trick, I think, in this next month, is that you're sorting through a lot of kids who have a lot of split allegiances, and they've got a lot of goals that could be very well dependent on that draft grade report that they get back. So that's where you need to have a buttoned-up operation and sort through who's really available and who's not. And that's what we're all going to be searching for over these next couple of weeks, because I would imagine that when the portal officially opens on January 2nd, we have a pretty good idea of who Florida State is kicking the tires on, right?
Yeah, I think so. And, Deuce is an interesting one, man, because, he's, I think he's a potential first-round NFL guy at some point. I just don't know if it's right now. I don't know if he's going to merit that this year. Maybe he will. And if he does, he's going to go. But if he's not, if he's a second day guy or third, maybe even a third round, I mean, who knows? I don't know how the NFL evaluations work. But that might make him and his, family and advisors think that, I can make a whole lot of money still in college because of NIL. I mean, I think he did pretty well this year. Florida State, I'm sure, would be willing to bump it up based on what he did. Nobody could have ever expected he was going to have the year he did. You might have hoped for it, but you couldn't have predicted it. And then, there's other schools that are going to be willing to pony up too. So, I think there's at least a decent chance that he comes back for another year. And, if you're Florida State, maybe you get a little bit of a hometown discount. I don't know that you're going to get a huge one, but you might get somewhat of a hometown discount. He wouldn't have to move. He already knows this offense. He likes Gus Malzahn and Mike Norvell. And, I think he likes his teammates, and he might have a chance to do something pretty special here. Whereas if you go somewhere else, you just never know. There is the unknown that goes with it. So if Florida State's in the ballpark financially, which I would think they would be, I can't imagine that they're not going to be competitive for Deuce Robinson, then I think there's a decent chance he comes back. But man, and that would just be, it just would be huge, because I think it could help them when it comes to, getting a quarterback. It could help them when it comes to, getting other players to stay, because I think it would be a validation for Mike Norvell and this coaching staff.
Well, and that's the chicken or the egg part of it too, is I'm sure he wants to sit back and see what Florida State is doing to better his opportunity for next year. Let's just, for argument's sake, let's say he's not going to the NFL. So he would be wise to sit back and wait to see what Florida State does. But Florida State would be wise to go to Deuce and say, hey, if you come back, I'll get more yeses. So how do you play that game? That's one of the things in modern college football. It's a dance. You've got to be able to execute well. Money talks, and that could help him say yes earlier, I would imagine, would be maybe a little bit, instead of a discount, maybe an incentive. Hey, if you say I'm coming back by X date, we'll make sure that we guarantee you a little bit more. To be a fly on the wall for these types of negotiations would be something, and a book that a lot of people would read.
And the one wild card with Deuce is, I will say this, and I don't know if it's a 5% impact or 1% impact or no impact at all. I do know that, and the kid likes being here. His dad played at Florida State. He loves being here. When I went to the soccer national championship banquet or party, whatever they had to cover that when they got back from winning the national championship, I think he's dating a girl on the soccer team, and he's there. And I just watched person after person after person go up to him and just want to talk to him and just, tell him how much they love watching him play. People were not harassing him. They just wanted to talk to him. And he could not be, I texted Dominic. I said, dude, you guys did really well. Cause he just soaked it all up, just gave everybody time, was very giving of his time. And Dominic was like, look, man, he was born that way. He goes, I just want to take credit for not screwing it up. He's like, he's just an incredible human being. And so from that standpoint, I do think he likes it here. Again, I don't know if it has much of an impact, but that is it's not nothing. It would be one thing if he was just a mercenary that was at Florida State or Southern Cal, or next year it could be at Oregon. I do think he really likes it here, and hopefully that plays into it too.
Question from Nole Nation 2025 says, how would the Nebraska quarterback be at FSU if we tried to get him, referring to Dylan Raiola, whose name went into the portal? Or, sorry, I got to keep checking myself, intends to enter his name into the portal when it comes to January. Got to be accurate on that. Not a natural fit, statistically speaking. You want to get away from the personality stuff and the Patrick Mahomes-like stuff. 6'3", 230. He's a rising junior, is Dylan Raiola. He's got a career negative 152 rushing yards because of all the sack yardages he's amassed. So Gus would be deviating here. You don't have to be Tommy Castellanos, but Jarrett Stidham could move a little bit too. Those types of quarterbacks. Not a natural fit, I would say, but I appreciate the question, old Nole Nation 2025. Wesley, thank you for becoming a member of the YouTube channel, Warchant Premier. We appreciate you. Wesley Dobbs has been around for a long time on a lot of our multimedia outlets, so thank you for making the decision today. And it's a decision that you could make right now in your life with insurance. If you want to get it better for 2026, you want to get it cheaper, but better coverage, better customer service, well, that's why you got to call our guy, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. He's got 2 shops on the eastern part of the state of Florida, Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park, but he serves 3 different states, Ira. He's a diehard Nole. He's watching things with great interest right now, commenting begrudgingly about some of the things that have and have not been done. He's like a lot of Noles out there in the chat right now, and he knows this business inside and out.
Well, Russ has high standards. That's how he operates his business, and he's holding Florida State athletics to a high standard as well. As you said, he's a guy that's contributed a lot to the program through the years. Huge FSU fan, and we really appreciate his support of the Monday Smash. And and again, sometimes it is finding the best rate when it comes to insurance, and Russ and his staff definitely try to be competitive in that space. But also, we know when the time comes and you need to have insurance, and I know you just recently had an accident, and it's important to know that they're going to be there with you. They're going to answer all your questions. They're going to handle all the tough parts. And Russ and his staff do a great job. And they do have the offices over there in Jacksonville, the Jacksonville area, but they service Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. And if you do reach out, please tell him you heard about him on the Monday Smash and Warchant, because he loves helping other Noles, and he's just again, good guy. And if you get him on the phone, maybe you could commiserate a little about FSU football. Just don't bring it back to here. Don't put his business on Front Street. It might not all be appropriate for the chat, but we appreciate Russ and his staff for what they do.
They're outstanding. I can tell you that, when I was in the accident, the car was totaled, and I wanted to move after the car was totaled from one insurance provider to another for the new car that came in. That there's a lot of questions there. And I will tell you that Ian, the gentleman that I work with, he's at the Orange Park office, 904-276-9535, walked me through the whole process and said, look, our rate probably isn't the cheapest one you're going to get for these 3 things that you want in terms of your limits and all these liability protections. Just want to make sure that you know that. I love that. Transparency. That's one thing that you can expect with State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Back to the chat. Eric says, Tom and Ira, is FSU going to bring a quarterback in from the portal, or are they going to give Kevin Sperry a try at the quarterback position? Ira, I'd say I'd be surprised if there wasn't another body on campus out of the portal for spring camp. Would you be stunned or shocked if they kept it the way it is right now in the quarterback room?
It's a non-starter. I mean, they can't. There's too much on the line for this program, not just for Mike Norvell's potential for lasting through another season or anybody on that staff, but just for the program's, just not having another. You just can't risk another subpar season. So they've got to go invest in a quarterback. They have to, and I think they will. That doesn't mean Kevin Sperry can't compete. I'm sure they're going to tell him, look, man, we'll bring somebody in. If you beat him out, you beat him out. But you can't. They didn't give him enough of an opportunity to prove that he could be the guy. And that's one of the things I have criticism of that coaching staff. I think they should have at some point giving Kevin Sperry some chances just to see what they have there. Because listen, if he is the guy, and they'd see him in practice, they have a good feel for it. But if sometimes guys are different in games. I'm not saying that. A lot of times fans and media talk about somebody's a gamer, they weren't good in practice, and coaches roll their eyes at that. They care more about practice than anything, and they don't want to put you on the field if they don't see it in practice. But at the same time, it does happen. And sometimes guys take their game to a different level. Sometimes guys don't practice that well if they know the starter is entrenched. And so I think that they should have done it, because if you could have saved that money, it could do so many things for you in other ways. But they didn't do that. They rode with Tommy every snap he was available. And so, at this point, they can't ride with Kevin Sperry.
I think that extends out to other positions like the offensive line, too. You've mentioned that on previous shows across Warchant TV's network, Ira, that, would have been nice to put this stuff on film. I think if they knew that they weren't going to get a bowl game, which is not good, obviously, but if they knew that, maybe they would have rolled those guys out there for the 4th game, in Kevin Sperry's case, specifically for the 4th game, or for a 2nd or a 3rd game in some of these other guys' circumstances at offensive line, maybe linebacker, maybe other places. It's just not having those extra practices for the bowl, and then not having a little bit more game film puts you in the dark a little bit about what you're going to do and how you're going to build this next roster. In short, you kind of created another problem when there's a lot of problems to deal with right now. That's another one, is the unknown, the problem of the unknown.
Yeah, and I think Mike Norvell, from everything I've heard, he really thought, obviously, when you win 3 games to start the season, 3-0, you think you're definitely going to go to a bowl game. So in his mind, he may have always thought, man, those weeks are going to be great. Those bowl practices are going to be great. And even down the stretch, like going into the Florida game, like he was, really focused on getting that 6th win. And if you don't do that, even if they had gone 5-7, I think he was on board with the idea of Florida State trying to go to a bowl game early on. Then it ended up not being able to work it out. But I think he thought that they would have that opportunity, and then it never happened. So yeah, it's just kind of the worst of all worlds, I think.
If you have questions for us tonight, feel free to file those away in the chat. We are watching now. The numbers go up. Nearly 1,100 of you across the Warchant multimedia footprint, nearly 400 on YouTube. Thanks for joining us for the holiday season. We've got a new sponsor to tell you about. We teased them last week. We'll bring them up in just a little bit. But Ira, as Florida State is meandering where they are right now, just wondering, from your perspective, we just talked about how the roster is what could get people excited about spring ball and moving forward. Where are you looking the most? Is it the front office? Is it the completion of the coaching staff? Is it maybe a signal that they send quietly under the radar that Gus is coming back next year? Like, as you're just trying to sort, all right, we're the 15th of December. The next month is going to include the following. What intrigues you more than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm just accepting that Gus is coming back. It could change. Maybe they'll come out and say that he's not. But at this point, I'm not going to worry about it anymore. I mean, in my mind, Gus Malzahn's coming back. He's going to be the offensive coordinator. I think there's enough evidence that seems like it's pointing in that direction. The general manager thing, I think, is intriguing. They are going to hire one, and I think it's going to happen soon. And I think there's going to be more additions in that realm in terms of the front office. I think they're going to bring in some new faces to help in that area. But I don't know that that's going to have I don't know how dramatic of an impact that's going to have on this season. We don't know. They already have, they have a scouting staff that's already working on the portal. So it's not like they're just waiting to find out who that's going to be before they even get started. That process is started with their existing staff, and then they'll bring in some new people. But I don't know how much of a huge impact that's going to be. So to me, it's all about the roster. I'm the same way as the fans. I mean, I just think it's all about the roster. It's all about these players. What can they get, and who's staying? Because they've got nice pieces. I mean, again, I'm not trying to convince people this is a team that is going to be great. But there are a lot of players you don't want to see leave. This is very different from a year ago. Last year, when they ended that season at 2-10, there's almost nobody that you thought, man, they can't lose that guy, or they can't lose there's a lot of people on this team that you really want to keep. From Mekhi Danzy and Lwayne McCoy and Deuce Robinson to some defensive players. I think that we talked about Jabril Rawls earlier, but even some of the defensive linemen, the Desir brothers, Kevin Wynn. I mean, there's a lot of players on this team you don't want to lose. And so I want to see how that plays out, and then who they can get out of the portal, mostly, quarterback. Everything else to me, if they get a running, I mean, I doubt they're going to get a running back in the portal. So there's not going to be any drama there. I doubt they're going to get a tight end in the portal. They're pretty loaded at that position. There's not really going to be, maybe they get a marquee pass rusher, but to me, it's going to be about the quarterback. That's going to determine the storylines of this offseason.
Yeah, I hope that edge rusher is a big part of the plans, but it's hard to say, right? Because you're right. They've got some younger guys that they might want to lean on after another year in the weight room. And especially in the Desir's case, you get up to another year in collegiate training. They're already very, very strong for true freshmen, but imagine them in their upperclassmen years. That's probably something they're talking about from a negotiation standpoint as well. It will be interesting, though. There's always a surprise or two, and I don't mean about guys that enter the portal that leave Florida State. But who had it on their bingo card that Jerry Wilson would be somebody that Florida State would be targeting last year, corner? And then, bam, they told you what they really thought about their roster in that moment, which is we need help at corner. That's something, you're right, like especially if Jabril Rawls was to leave. I mean, you're going to have to hit the defensive backfield, I think, at least for one guy, if not two, in the portal, in addition to the work where you're going to spend a lot of your money, which is on quarterback in the trenches, I would imagine.
Yeah, and there's a lot of uncertainty even in the depth at that position, because Kai Bates now is going to go in the portal. A younger guy who's just a redshirt freshman. But a lot of these guys were they were almost all signed by Patrick Surtain, who got fired. And so you may have more defections, not necessarily at the starter level, even beyond Jabril Rawls, but maybe just some of those other depth pieces. Ricky Knight got suspended from the team this past season. So, there's no question, there's no certainty about what his status is going to be. And he was a guy that was kind of fringe, competing for playing time. So, yeah, that position is going to definitely need a lot of help. The one thing I wanted to mention, we haven't really talked too much about this, but I did want to mention it real quick because a lot of people bring it up on the message boards that, Florida State does have a lot of guys that signed 2-year contracts last year. They have a lot of guys that were on those multi-year agreements, and it's not, those are not like set in stone where they can't leave. They just, if they go to another school, a lot of times there's a provision where that school has to buy them out. They have to they have to basically compensate you for taking them away. But, from talking to people in the industry, there's a lot of the multi-year deals are not the salve that a lot of people hope they would be in terms of like giving you real stability. The expectation is if schools want guys off your roster, they'll pay that fee. And so you may have to renegotiate with guys on your own roster. So for example, if you had a player on a 2-year deal, but they had a better season than you expected, you're still going to have to renegotiate with them, or somebody else is going to try to take them away. So that's not the comfort maybe that some people thought it was going to be.
Well, and that's where, I brought it up a couple of weeks ago on the boards. Like Florida State has about $5 to $7 million to work with from whatever bucket you want to draw from is what I was told a couple of weeks ago. That number is so fluid, Ira, because guys can leave. Right. Kids that had agreements in place from the high school ranks could have decommitted and left. If Deuce Robinson was to move on, you're going to have a lot more money in that range than you would have otherwise. But you're right, pay bumps. I believe the Desirs were on a multi-year deal. I'm sure they outperformed what was in that multi-year deal, and they're going to have to come back to the negotiating table, especially for Mandrell, right. But probably both of them, because in a weird way they have leverage as a tandem together, and they're going to have to discuss that and make sure that money is whole. I also am just fascinated on a very basic level, Ira, where things are being challenged on a fundamental level. Like, are schools actually going to pay the other school the buyout money? Will that ever get taken to court and challenged? I wonder how this is all going to shake out, but there's no doubt that it's not prohibitive. It's not cost prohibitive for a school, if they were interested in a player, to go just poach one from a roster and then pay 50 cents on the dollar for what they believe they're going to get in terms of player value.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard for me to say. From talking to the people I've talked to at a couple different schools, they do think that that's going to happen. The payments are going to happen because they're going to get it on both ends. Like, they're going to get paid back too for their. But now the one thing, you can't just take that money and put it back into. It doesn't like add to your cap. It's just you get the money and that's great, but it doesn't. It's not like you add that money to your cap. So it's there's not a lot of, there have not been a lot of great solutions based on, this process so far, and just having multi-year deals doesn't necessarily solve everything either.
Okay, thank you for the contribution. He says, I understand the point to go get a portal quarterback, but doesn't that set a dangerous future recruiting precedent that this coach, based on history, will always portal over his own high school guy? Your thoughts, Ira? You're nodding.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely not just the concern about the perception, but it's also concern about what does Kevin Sperry do? Kevin Sperry's a confident kid. I think his, family believes he can play at this level. And I think that they were excited about the possibility of playing for Gus Malzahn. So that's going to have to be worked through because, he's going to either want to, and listen, maybe he, after a year of college football, realizes maybe I need more time and I'm okay sitting behind somebody. That's possible. But it's also possible he says, you know what, if you're going to bring somebody else in, I'm going to bounce and go somewhere else. I don't know that he's a huge prospect on the transfer portal market. He didn't get a lot of opportunities this year, and he was not at the top of the quarterback recruiting rankings coming out of high school. But, people, there's a lot of teams looking for quarterbacks, and he may appeal to them. And he may just be at the point where, hey, I just want to go somewhere where I've got a chance. And if you're bringing a portal guy, I don't have a chance. So, yeah, that's all fine. But as far as perceptions, though, and it's a fair point, Kev, but I think the perception business left a long time ago. They have to win football games by any way manageable. So, yeah, you'd like to run your program a certain way, but they also have to win games. They just have to win football games because it's been 3 years since they were winning football games.
And I think it's also that's the nature of the sport in general to a degree, and to a large degree of Florida State. I mean, they have portaled over guys constantly year after year. Now it looks like maybe finally this offseason, Ira, as long as there's retention, the defensive line might be mostly homegrown for the first time. Like, wow, how about that? A 3 or 4 man front next year with three dudes that are heavily in the rotation at minimum that they brought out of high school. All right, that's a start. You're starting somewhere. But most of these positions have been portal dependent year after year after year. They're trying to kick that habit. So what I would say to Kev is they're already there from a perception standpoint. And right now they're in survival mode. So you're agreeing with you, Ira, they don't have the time to worry about perception at all right now because they're fighting for their jobs, at least probably. Justin says,
you would assume.
I'm assuming nothing anymore, man. I've been burned. I've been hurt. And you know what? I'm going to just peek around the corner if they're in the same position next year and say, y'all going to do anything? Justin says, lost a lot of staff and so far, and replacements haven't signed on, quote unquote. So what's your thoughts on getting the right coaches and how many more coaches will be lost by attrition? Well, getting the right coaches, listen, this is not a stable situation that you're signing on to right now. There's opportunity at Florida State that if you make it right, your star is going to be on the rise. But I think they have to, Ira, take a look at the obvious part. There are a lot of negatives to saying yes to Florida State right now, and they've got to find people that are up to the challenge, like literally up for a challenge, because that's what this is if you take the gig at Florida State under Mike Norvell in 2026. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's I'm really curious about whether or not anybody else is leaving, first of all. And again, on the offensive side of the ball, it looks like they're standing pat. In terms of other than bringing in they're going to bring in a new quarterbacks coach, whether they promote from within or bring somebody from the outside, and they also already have a running backs coach in place, even though it hasn't been signed yet, as he said. But a lot of times that's just HR paperwork. It's not a big deal. Turned out to be kind of a bigger deal when Brandon Harris backed out as the DB's coach. But in general, once it's known that once the reporters that are the newsbreakers that get the information from the agents and that circle of people, and that somebody has agreed to take a job, 99 or 98% of the time that ends up happening, but it has to go through the legal paperwork, background checks, and all that kind of stuff. But the other question is on defense. You've already brought in a defensive ends coach, edges coach, and so that's one new position. And then you're going to hire a new cornerbacks coach, but only one assistant is left. There's no rule that you couldn't have an extra assistant coach. Those rules are kind of gone now. But you would think that maybe there's going to be another position coming open. There was a lot of speculation that John Papuchis, linebackers coach, would not be retained, but nothing's happened there. So it's either a case where he's maybe trying to find something else, or maybe he's going to stay. So there's still some uncertainty there with the coaching staff where it goes. But yeah, it's going to be tough, man. The two ways that you can attract. Well, there's a lot of variables that go into hiring assistant coaches. One is the opportunity to coach at Florida State is definitely attractive. The money that Florida State can pay for assistant coaches, going back historically, people can make jokes about Florida State and how much money they have compared to these SEC schools. But through the years, Florida State's coaching staff has always been one of the top, 10, 15 highest paid coaching staffs in college football. So you're going to get paid. The other variable, though, is if you don't have a head coach that's got a lot of job security, if you're not starting out with a new coaching staff where you've got years of job security, a lot of times you have to guarantee a long-term deal. Well, we don't know what the appetite is for Florida State right now to do that. Last year they did. They gave Gus Malzahn a 3-year deal. They gave Tony White a 3-year deal. But if they hire these assistant coaches, are they willing to give 3-year deals? Probably not. Maybe at most 2-year deals. And it's possible, maybe even a 1-year deal. I would guess probably 2-year deals, but do you have to overpay? So there's a lot of variables that go into it. As I said at the beginning, I don't think they're going to be able to put together an all-star cast of coaches. I think they're going to get guys in, try to lean into guys who can recruit. That's what they've done so far, and that's what I think they'll continue to do.
Out of curiosity, from a PR standpoint, like put on your public relations or sports information hat. As we understand it, John Papuchis' contract is up in February, like the most recent one that was released, and you reported on it. We have a report from way back when on Warchant outlining extensions that guys got after the 2023 season. Do you announce an extension, or do you just like power through and they showing up at spring camp and everybody understands that there was something signed. How would you handle that situation if you were Florida State?
Yeah, most of the time since I've been doing this, I mean, most of the time they don't announce extensions. Like we have to request them, and so the media will put in requests for any new contracts for assistant coaches, and sometimes specifically by name or just blanket requests. And so sometimes it doesn't come out till later. I know that there was a lot of drama. I don't know if people remember a few years ago, because it was never reported that, like, when Ron Dugans was here and that he and a couple other assistant coaches have been extended, nobody had requested the contracts after they had been re-signed. They had got extensions and nobody requested it. And then later that season, I think it was probably 2021, maybe somewhere in there, that it got out late in the year. Some media put it out there. And then people were like, wait a minute, we just extended them now. And it's like, no, they actually got extended 8 months ago or 6 months ago. It just was never reported. So that's what I think will happen. But in this case, we'll all be sending in requests to try to find out if there's new deals in place.
Wasn't there something weird that happened with Leonard Hamilton with an extension?
Man.
What was the story there? That was wild.
So they did announce an extension with Leonard Hamilton so he could coach that next year, but then he never signed it. And from what I understand, his agent had sent it back with a lot of corrections or whatever, and it kind of went back and forth. And the last time it went back to Leonard Hamilton. So he basically coached a season without a contract. When we asked people about it, they're like, oh yeah, that happens sometimes in the business. I don't know, man. I don't know what kind of business we're operating here where you have a coach who's not on contract, but apparently it was on him. He would not sign, he or his agent would not, and Leonard didn't do an agent, he had an attorney, but he wouldn't sign it. And so at some point it just got to they actually went into the season and he had not signed his contract.
I remember that going, am I reading this right? Like, wait a minute. He wasn't playing under contract or coaching under contract. Yeah. There
was another one with him. I don't know if you remember this, where the former athletic director, Stan Wilcox, told me that he signed it, that Leonard, they got an extension. So I put it out there, and then they tried to kind of deny that he had gotten an extension because it was right after they lost an NCAA tournament game, the game they lost to Xavier down in Orlando. And so they got so much blowback. They tried to deny that they got an extension, but they did. Anyway, it was there was a couple curious things with Leonard and his contracts.
Never change, admin. You silly gooses. Eric says, are there any must-have quarterbacks in the portal right now? I don't see any. For the money, this is almost like the coaching stuff with me, Ira. Was Lane Kiffin ever worth $12, $13, $14 million? No, he's not proven. I don't know. You going after DJ Lagway, and the way I see On3 reporting today that Miami and LSU and others are interested, like, really? I mean, for how much money? The price point matters big time for all of these decisions, but what do you think?
Yeah, and I was wondering, and I have not read anything on the Lagway thing. Do you think because I did see one blurb about, like, he had met with the coaches and wanted to stay, but then it kind of went sideways. Do you think they were going to cut his NIL? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and I'm not reporting that, right, but I think that's got to be part of the math about kids entering the portal is they might, or intending to enter the portal, is they're trying to use it to leverage to stay where they are. I don't, for example, Florida State's at, I think, 15 kids right now. You can find that list on the tribal council of everybody that's intended to enter the portal from Florida State. I don't think all 15 are gone. I think it's a numbers game. You'll probably get 2 or 3 back. It happened last year. It happened the year before. Daryl Jackson and Josh Farmer, we were on, like, every semester we were on watch of, are they going to enter the portal or not? Patrick Payton as well. I think some of this is a negotiating ploy, and some of these kids may stay, but I don't know what kind of open market there is for DJ Lagway. I mean, that would have to be incentive laden, and I don't know that they can do that from a rev share standpoint. So sure things at quarterback was the question.
Yeah,
I don't see any right now, sir. Not at all.
No, but I do think there's going to be a lot more entering. Again, the portal doesn't open till January 2nd, and then it's open for 2 weeks. So I think you're going to see a lot more guys enter, and we'll see. I mean, we definitely, Matt, I think, put in his story that he did on the 3 quarterbacks that were kind of out there early. I think he reported that the Florida State does have interest in a couple of those guys, the kid at West Florida, and the other dude Old Dominion. that Florida State, from what he understands, has expressed some interest in those two guys. So, and they're just the first guys out there. I think Florida State's going to express interest in a lot of people that enter the portal, and they may have an idea of who's going to be entering through back channels. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of options. And again, do I think Florida State's going to get in the bidding for the top ones? No, but I think there's going to be people that they could go get.
Yeah, this is also where you do need to be prudent. Are you going to get into a bidding war just to go get the most expensive quarterback because it feeds people hope? Again, that's not. You're going to have to be smarter. Same energy as the coaching search. If they were going to let go of Mike Norvell, Ira, we had this conversation a bunch. I don't want that number for the next guy to be crazy high. I didn't see the value in that where we are right now. They're going to have to be the same way and shrewd with some of these acquisitions they make out of the portal. No Nation says, I hope we don't lose the Twins. Ira, when it became clear or pretty clear that Tony White's not leaving, because I imagine he's not, I felt better about the Desirs sticking on. Boy, does he love them, and he was willing to tell people about the Desir twins way back in the spring, summer, preseason camp, and obviously they've had a very good year under his and Terrence Knighton's leadership that first year. I think that the fact that there weren't changes to the defensive staff on that level probably increases the likelihood that they'll make it work and the Desirs are going to be back next year. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And, and it's kind of a combination, this whole staff, because, they originally were committed to UCF. And so you had Gus and that staff, and then Terrence Knighton's been coaching them, and he's obviously done a tremendous job with them. And like you said, the confidence that they've had in those guys. Tony White's a likable dude. Terrence Knighton's a likable dude. I think that's a group that, again, Darrell Jackson, the coaches have made this comment a few times late in the season. I don't know that anybody's really cared too much because the people are just so mad about the team. But I watched him in that Florida game when they came. Remember when, you'll remember. I don't have to, it's probably etched in your memory. When they went for it on fourth down on their own 40 and Florida scores like 3 plays later.
Yeah.
When they went to the sideline, it was either that drive or the next drive, but basically the defense had kind of cashed in at that point. It was clear that they were done. But Darrell Jackson went over to the sideline and took his helmet and just threw it down as hard as he could on the ground. He was so angry in that moment. And that's interesting to me because he's leaving, right? It's his last game. Was he even going to play in a bowl game? Who knows? But the fact that he was playing that hard, I do think that those guys connect with Terrence Knighton. I think they connect with Tony White. I think those guys generally played hard this year. And so, yeah, I think that's a factor, man. I definitely think it's a positive. Does it guarantee they're staying? No. But I definitely think it's a positive. And Florida State's going to pay those guys. I mean, they're not going to no. Again, you're going to pay for proven players, and those guys are. And we always kind of gloss over Darrell because Mandrell had such a big year with 6.5 sacks. Darrell, for a freshman, Darrell had a really good year too.
Yes, no, I would agree. By the end of the year, the numbers look really, really good. Like I would have taken that for either of the Desirs, maybe the Desirs combined before the season started. What Darrell put together in terms of tackles for loss, like there's a pulse there. And again, when it comes to advising who gets raises and who doesn't, it's obvious with the Desirs, but Tony White's going to advocate like crazy for them to get the money that they're asking for or whatever it is that they need to do from those rev share negotiation standpoint. I do want to get to this one off the football question. Over under 50 wins for FSU baseball. Ira, we got 50 days, 50. Man. Yeah. Wow. They have not done that by my math. And by that, I mean Wikipedia, since 2012, it looks like. Do you think that this is a first in 13 years? Does Florida State get outsized success in a sport in order to account for what we're going through here with some other major sports? What do you think? Over, under? The under is going to be a heavy, heavy favorite, but what say you?
I will say everybody I talk to, when I run into people around town and we start commiserating about this football season and the way men's basketball appears to be trending, and women's basketball is trending, and soccer's over now, so you can't even ride that everybody's just kind of, all right, well, baseball and softball is going to be fun. And I do think baseball is going to be fun. I would not predict 50 wins. I mean, that's a lot of wins in today's age, especially because everybody's got good players. The midweek games are tough a lot of times, and especially if somebody decides to throw their ace against the Florida State. So, yeah, I would not predict 50. How about you?
50 is a natty. And I want it. I wish for it. Maybe I'll call for it in the New Year's Eve show that we do, or the last one of the new year, as a bold prediction. But just for to give you an idea, when they made it as far as they did a couple seasons ago, 49 wins was what they got to, which was as far as you can go without getting to that best-of-3 series. Obviously, the check swing that was not called. Otherwise, you probably get to 50 that year, and I think you do have your first national title. We do want to welcome officially on board. We told you about them. We told you that they were coming, and here they are. This episode is sponsored in part by the Copper Drip, a specialty coffee brand built on purpose and quality. The Copper Drip sources premium coffee beans from around the world, but they're right here in our backyard in Tallahassee, and they deliver to you wherever you are in Nole Nation. Ira, tell the folks about our new sponsor that you have made their acquaintance at the Copper Drip, and who are people buying from when they buy from the Copper Drip in Tallahassee?
Yeah, so Brandon and Sierra. Sierra is actually, she's the president or CEO. I'm not sure the official title, but it's her company. But Brandon's her husband. Sierra is a business executive. That's what her day job is. But she really just kind of has talking to her. And if you go to their website, you can find more information. But she just really had a passion for coffee because of her relationship with her mother. And that's kind of where it started when she was a younger person and drinking coffee with her mom, who's now passed on, but carrying that legacy. Brandon's a Tallahassee firefighter. He's been a firefighter for 15 years, a lot of long shifts. So he knows about the importance of coffee as well. So they decided to start this business, and man, it's really cool. The Coffee Drip is coffeedrip.com is the website. We've had it. Kim and I got it as soon as we tasted it. They do a lot of events around town, like festivals and things like that. We tried it there. We loved it. Kim ordered some, and then we started talking. Brandon's a huge Nole. He already watches a lot of our content. And so it just seemed like a natural fit. But as you said, they source the coffee beans from around the world. They've got like a kind of a pretty strong mission statement. If you go to their website, in terms of ethically, the farmers that they support, the kind of farming in terms of living wages for the farmers that they buy from, they're very selective about that. Then they actually do the roasting here in Tallahassee. They have a bunch of different varieties. If you go to the website, you can taste them. What I like about it, man, and I'm not a huge coffee drinker. I have not been. I'm starting to be though. But the biggest thing to me is like my issue with coffee sometimes is you get that coffee aftertaste, and you kind of have that. If I don't go brush my teeth right away, I don't love that taste afterwards. But I was telling Kim, we had some over the weekend, and you don't get it. Their coffee's very smooth. Sometimes coffee can be kind of bitter. It's delicious, man. I think they do a great job with the beans. And they also have a promo code for Monday Smash listeners, and we hope people will give them a try.
That's it. Yeah, each roast is crafted. This is what their goal is, Ira, for bold, smooth, well-balanced flavor from light to dark roasts and coffee options to fit every lifestyle. So if you want whole bean, K-Cups, and instant, they're all available to you through the Copper Drip. Your code, all right, everybody, especially those podcast listeners, here it is, MSMASH15. You're going to capitalize the M and the S there. MSMASH15 for 15% off, exclusive offer for our viewers and our listeners of the Monday Smash. Visit thecopperdrip.com, use code MSMASH15, and brew something meaningful, or book the Copper Drip for your next event. So again, it's not just about getting their products. If you're in town and you've got an event and you want to elevate that event, thecopperdrip.com is where you go. Visit thecopperdrip.com. Welcome aboard, Copper Drip.
And also, welcome aboard for sure. And also check out their Instagram page, the Copper Drip on Instagram, because they'll let you know where they're going to be around town, because they have a pop-up, basically a kiosk that they'll show up at a lot of different events on the weekends, and you can book them. As you said, you can book them for your private events as well. So welcome on board. We're really fired up to have them with us.
I'm looking at that decaf for craft cocktails over the winter. Coffee cocktails for cold weather. They go perfectly together, sir.
So a friend of mine's been, my buddy Ralph over in Jacksonville has turned me on to the martini espressos or espresso martinis. Mm-hmm. Man, I don't know. Yeah, they taste good, man. They taste good.
Buddy, our palates are so very similar. You get us a jalapeno bacon barbecue burger, like we're in. Brisket, we're in. And now also the craft cocktails. I'll show you where I was this weekend. I got a killer espresso martini. You would love this. They put an ice cream sandwich in there. Look at that.
Lovely.
Yeah, I know.
Nice.
Fantastic. So the copperdrip.com is where you go, but they also sponsor a segment, which is What's Brewing. Here's What's Brewing. So what's coming up this week as Florida State is transitioning and we're pushing towards that portal opening. Tell us, Ira, what it is you're looking for and what the folks can expect from us this week at warchant.com or Warchant TV.
Yeah, so there's I do, from what I'm told, the front office stuff is going to happen pretty soon. So I think that's going to be coming pretty soon. So stay locked into warchant.com for that. Also, there's still additional coaching changes, and we're also doing some stuff looking at the program as a whole, looking at the needs, going into the transfer portal. That's going to evolve as maybe new Florida State names emerge. But there's some pictures, some positions that we already can get a feel for, and there's players already available. So we're already kind of making that transition to that. And as far as basketball, men's basketball, huge game tomorrow night at Dayton. I do think Luke may have regretted this non-conference schedule. Maybe he could have scheduled some more wins in the non-conference schedule. But they have played a murderer's row. The games they've played, these last 4 games they're all ACC caliber or better. So it's going to be, that from that standpoint, they are battle tested. They play Tuesday night at Dayton. That'll be a big game for them to show that they've kind of maybe learned something from these experiences, because ACC play starts up pretty soon.
It would be nice if they started ACC play with something like Georgia Tech, Wake, NC State, Boston College, but that's not even the case. Nope. They're starting with North Carolina on the road and Duke at home. When does it end? Luke is probably, you're right. He's probably going, oh my God. No wonder people rolled their eyes when I said I wanted to play all 4 Final Four teams from last year. Wes, thank you for the contribution back again. He says, have you heard anything about what's going on with the Battle's End? Are we throwing our money away if Alford won't use it? LSU is not playing by the rules. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. A lot of SEC teams are telling the world that they do not wish to play by the rules of market value contracts above the level of rev share, because you're seeing numbers like $25 million for a roster, $30 million for a roster being thrown out there. Yeah. I know, here's what I do know, is that everybody that's involved with the money when it comes to Florida State wants to get it right, but I really don't know who's in charge of what anymore, Ira, in the post-house world. Like I don't know how that all gets meted out and how you pull from one bucket or another bucket. So I don't want to act like an expert when I'm not. But I know a lot of people want to get it right. Who's in charge, how it works, I don't know enough to speak on that topic. Is there anything you could offer in that regard?
Well, I would just say specifically to what Wesley's asking about the Battle's End, it is still there. They're still, operating. They're still collecting money. They're still active. From what I understand, they're still working on deals. The challenge is they're trying to navigate what's an illegal deal in this new world, because they do have, with NIL Go and the clearinghouse that it has to go through, you can't just do what you've been doing for the last few years, which was just, we're giving these guys money because we want them to come to our school. There have to be some sort of legitimate NIL deals. Your collective can be part of that. It's not like they have to be removed. It's not like they close up shop. The Battle's End can still be a part of that, but I do believe they're trying to work through the framework of what's permissible. In fact, talking to Ingram, and we didn't get the specifics about who the player was, but and I don't think this is out of school, but he was like, we're working on some packages right now that we think will be the blueprint that can work. So the Battle's End still active. They're still a part of the process. Don't give up on them, but I do think they're trying to get clarity on exactly how they can operate. And then as that goes through, then they'll probably share more information. I don't think they're sharing a whole lot of information right now about the logistics, because they're trying to kind of navigate this process.
A lot of important conversations to the end are being had, I think, even still right now, which is to your point. But to tell you about just a little bit about how the Battle's End is working, here's what I do know is the Rolodex used to be the roster. Like, the roster is who deals with the Battle's End. Now it's a much more select group of people. So, the rev share takes a large chunk of the Battle's End's work away from the Battle's End. If you just think about pre-house settlement, and now what they're doing is they're trying to supplement the heavy hitters. And I would imagine that also means the portal as well, but that's something we're going to be watching very, very closely, because look, Ira, between the front office stuff that they're working on, Mike Norvell coming back for another year, the statement that came down for the administration where the Battle's End fits into that, a lot of the conversations that are happening now, I would imagine not in email form, are very important because they're setting the agenda for what 2026 looks like. I don't think that's all resolved right now, and I think that's probably the case in many places, not just at Florida State.
That's what I was going to say. It's hard for them to be resolved because it's not resolved in the sport. Like, nobody knows how this is all going to play out. As you said, there's a lot of schools who are basically letting everybody know we're not going to play by the rules, and then you got other schools that are still trying to push that through, and they think there'll be some sort of reckoning, but nobody knows for sure. So yeah, Florida State, they're trying to, get on the path that they think that they can follow, but until the big picture kind of gets ironed out, it's hard to know exactly what that's going to look like.
Grant asks, does the basketball team finish above 500? Tough question.
I think that's a long shot at this point. I mean, again, they that's what I was saying. Like, Luke, I understand why he scheduled the way he did. He wanted to schedule aggressively because he wanted to prepare them for ACC play. You have a lot of players on this team that have never played at that level, other than Wiggins, who transferred from Clemson. Most of these guys played mid-major basketball. Now, Robert McCray clearly can play at this level. I think LeJay Jones can. I think some of these guys can play at this level, but I think he wanted them to get really battle-tested to get them ready for the ACC. But the problem is now you've lost these games, and so they're 5-5. They're not going to be much over 500 when they go into ACC play, and it's almost impossible to see them going 500 in the ACC. So, yeah, I mean, and it's fair. Corey and Aslan and I were texting over the weekend, and Aslan fairly asked, what did people expect? Yep. You did have a whole completely new roster, new coaching staff, and you don't have a ton of NIL money. So what did you expect? Now, that class they've got coming in next year, I think, you're talking about some high-level basketball players. But at the same time, they can be more competitive than they've been. He's criticized their lack of effort. Luke Laux has criticized the players' lack of effort. You can see it that they're not competing the way they need to compete, and they're not shooting great either. So, it's hard to imagine they're going to be anywhere close to 500 in the ACC. But that doesn't mean he can't turn it around. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day. They pointed out, I think Todd Golden's first year UF was around 500 or lower. Mm-hmm. Nate Oates at Alabama started off really tough. I mean, it's a challenge, man, your first year, but that you've got to hit it for that second year, though.
This is where you say, thank God for the early signing period for basketball, because Florida State does have those kids locked in, and that is literally a light at the end of the tunnel for Luke, who, you're right, is not afraid to say very aggressive things about his own roster to the media. He's a young coach who is not afraid. It'll be interesting to document as the weeks go along. All right, Ira, I'm not holding you to this. I'm sure people are going to isolate this video and hold you to it. But Brett says, can we get a GM already? I'm setting the over-under at Christmas Day. Does Florida State have a GM in its stocking before Christmas Day or after Christmas Day?
Man, you made it easy. I think definitely before.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I would. When Derek Ray left, I had a conversation with somebody who, expressed confidence that there were going to be some new additions coming pretty soon. Now, by that conversation, I thought it might be by now, but it's not by now. But I do think, again, I don't know for sure. I can't say that this is 100% accuracy, but I would think for sure by Christmas, it may be this week.
All right. So maybe next Monday on the Smash, we're talking about Florida State's new GM. We will be back before the holidays one more time. We want to thank everybody who contributed to the chat today, whether that was monetary or with your questions. Thank you for advancing the discussion. Head over to warchant.com right now. Sign up for just $1. It gives you 5 days access to warchant.com, the largest FSU fan community in the business. Also, we don't tell people this enough, at least I don't. You get 10% off every garnet and gold purchase while you're an active member of warchant.com. It pays you right back as soon as you join. So head over to Warchant, sign up, interact with the message boards on the Tribal Council and the Premium Recruiting and Portal Board. A lot of traffic going on there right now, and you'll see great coverage all week from us at Warchant. Go ahead.
Not everybody in a great mood. It's not a lot of people in great moods over there, but you can come commiserate, and there's a lot of information, a lot of people on the message boards. I mean, that's, I tell people all the time, one of the great values of our site is the fact that Gene started warchant.com under a different name almost 30 years ago, 1996. Wow. So, and we've got people from day one. People have their stories from, when they logged in from 1996 or in 2000 or 2002 or in 2006, or maybe it was Leon Washington, Lorenzo Booker, maybe it was that class, whatever it was. So you have a community there. A lot of these people have been communicating with each other on message boards for 30 years, but then there's a lot of other people that just are very knowledgeable, have a lot of information, just a great place. And then the staff, we all interact on the message boards as well. So come check it out.
I wonder how long it would take to load one of our web pages with a 56K modem, like it used to be in the mid to late 90s. Probably quite some time. For Director Nick Carlisle behind the scenes, for our sponsors, our lead sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, who is awesome at what he does and is a great Nole, and our new sponsor, the Copper Drip. For all of you behind the scenes that have helped us with your questions this week, he's Ira, I'm Tom. We will talk to you tomorrow on Warchant TV. You've got Seminole Headlines live at 1 o'clock. Wake Up Warchant's going to be in your pod feeds overnight, and tons of coverage between now and the end of the week, and the next time we sign on for the Monday Smash on Monday, December the 22nd. Good night, everybody.